What if I told you ancient humans didn't actually invent fire? For most of our history, we couldn't make it at all. We could only steal it and beg it to stay alive. That's genuinely what fascinates me about this topic. Everyone assumes some caveman rubbed two sticks together one day, and boom, fire was born. But the real story is slower, stranger, and honestly, a lot more humbling than that. And here's something that genuinely surprised me while researching this. Fire didn't wait around for humans to show up. It was already burning across this planet for over 400 million years before a single human ancestor ever laid eyes on it. For billions of years before that, Earth simply couldn't catch fire at all. Volcanoes erupted, lightning struck constantly, but fire needs fuel, and fire needs oxygen. And this planet, for most of its history, barely had either. Then plants crawled onto land roughly 470 million years ago and quietly started pumping oxygen into the air as a waste product of simply existing. It took tens of millions of years, but eventually the atmosphere crossed a threshold. Around 420 million years ago, the oldest confirmed wildfire on the planet burned across a bed of small leafless plants in what's now England. Scientists know this because the fire left something behind that never fully disappeared. Charcoal. By the time dinosaurs existed, wildfires were common, sometimes even more intense than the ones we see today. Entire forests burned, regrew, and burned again for hundreds of millions of years, with absolutely nobody there to notice or benefit from it. So when the first early humans finally encountered fire, they weren't discovering something new to the planet at all. They were simply the first species in 400 million years of wildfires that figured out how to make it work for them instead of just running from it. Deep in a cave in South Africa called Wonderwerk, scientists found something that shouldn't have survived this long. Tiny fragments of ash, burnt bone, buried in a layer of earth, roughly 1 million years old. And figuring that out wasn't simple. Wind can carry ash into a cave. Water can wash charcoal in from somewhere else entirely. So researchers had to prove under a microscope that this particular ash could only have formed right there inside that cave, not somewhere outside and blown in later. 1 million years? That's long before Homo sapiens existed. Whoever kept that fire alive wasn't us. It was an earlier ancestor, Homo erectus, using something none of their predecessors ever managed to control. And this is where most people get the story completely wrong. Because using fire and making fire are two very different skills. Ancient humans mastered one of them hundreds of thousands of years before the other. For an enormous stretch of human history, fire wasn't something we created. It was something we found. Lightning strikes a dry tree. A wildfire sweeps across the grassland. And somewhere in the chaos, an early human watches and waits. Think about how strange that moment actually is. Every instinct in your body says, run from the flames. And yet, somewhere along the way, a small number of early humans overrode that instinct entirely and walked toward the fire instead. Then carefully, they took a burning branch and carried it home. Not invention. Theft. Quiet, careful theft from a world that was constantly trying to burn itself out anyway. And once they had it, the entire group's job became keeping it alive, feeding it, sheltering it from rain. Personally, I think that's one of the most overlooked parts of this story. Fire, in a way, became the group's very first responsibility, almost like a fragile pet that could kill you if you let it get too hungry or ignored it for too long. So if they couldn't make fire, only guard it, what happened the moment it went out? It's genuinely chilling to think about. If a hearth died in the middle of winter, with no lightning strike in sight, that group might go without fire for weeks, maybe longer. Maybe forever. Some anthropologists even suspect this single fear shaped early human cooperation itself. If your survival depended on a flame that could vanish overnight, you needed neighbors willing to share theirs. Fire may have quietly forced early humans to trust each other long before they had any other reason to. Around 790,000 years ago, At a site in Israel called Gesher Benot Ya'aqov, archaeologists found something remarkable. Not just ash, actual clusters of burnt flint grouped together in specific spots. Real hearths. That clustering is the key detail. A wildfire burns wherever the wind pushes it. It doesn't organize itself into tidy little circles. Someone was choosing exactly where the fire lived, and that single decision quietly opened a door. Suddenly, humans could push into colder land that used to be unlivable without a source of warmth they could carry with them. But keeping ancient humans warm might not even be fire's biggest gift to us. There's a stranger theory here, one that I find genuinely hard to stop thinking about once you hear it. Some researchers believe fire didn't just protect early humans, it rebuilt them from the inside out. Cooking meat and plants breaks them down before they ever reach your stomach, unlocking far more calories than eating them raw ever could. And there's a physical trade-off that comes with that. Raw food takes a huge, energy-hungry digestive system to break down. Once cooking did some of that work externally, human guts could actually afford to shrink, freeing up energy that used to go entirely toward digestion. That freed up energy had to go somewhere. Some scientists genuinely believe it went straight into fuel for the most expensive organ in the human body, the brain. Cooked food, they argue, is one real reason our brains grew as large as they did. I'll be honest, that idea still gets me a little. It means the ability to think, to plan, maybe even to sit here and tell you this story, might trace back to a warm meal beside a stolen flame. Still, none of this answers the actual question this video promised. Using fire is one thing, so how did ancient humans finally learn to create it from absolutely nothing? And here's something wild. The answer to that exact question only became clear very recently. In late 2025, in a quiet English town called Barnham, archaeologists dug up the answer. Buried in 400,000-year-old soil, they found scorched earth, cracked flint hand axes, fractured by extreme heat, and two tiny fragments of a mineral called pyrite. Pyrite doesn't naturally occur at that site. Someone carried it there on purpose, and pyrite, struck hard against flint, throws off a spark hot enough to catch dry moss instantly. One archaeologist on the project called it a game changer for the entire field. And honestly, I don't think that's an exaggeration. This pushed the confirmed date of true firemaking back by roughly 350,000 years, almost overnight. Before this discovery, the oldest solid evidence of humans actually making fire was only around 50,000 years old. One single site in England rewrote that number by 7 times over. And that gap makes sense once you think about it. Ash disappears, charcoal rots away, rain washes an entire hearth into nothing within a few centuries. Proving firemaking that old meant finding one of the only places on Earth where the evidence somehow never got the chance to vanish. And it likely wasn't even modern humans who cracked this problem first. The timeline lines up with early Neanderthals, or a close relative, quietly striking sparks in the dark long before Homo sapiens spread across the planet. And if that surprises you, it shouldn't. Not entirely. We've seen this pattern before on this channel. Iron wasn't invented by one genius. Weapons weren't either. Fire just adds one more name to that same quiet list. Once a group could create fire on command, everything about daily life shifted. No more rationing a single flame like a precious secret. No more losing everything to one bad storm. And here's something I think we take completely for granted today. Before fire, night simply meant the day was over. Fire quietly extended it. Suddenly, there were hours of light after the sun had already gone down. Picture that scene for a second. A small group, gathered tightly around a fire, protected from the dark, with nothing left to do but talk. Researchers studying modern hunter-gatherer groups have noticed something interesting. Around daytime fires, people mostly discuss practical things, food, tools, complaints. But at night, around the flames, the conversation shifts toward stories, myths, and memory. Personally, I think that's the detail people skip past too quickly. Fire didn't just cook our food or warm our skin. It may have quietly created the very first stage for human storytelling itself. And fire wasn't only shaping culture, it was shaping technology too. At a site called Pinnacle Point in South Africa, researchers found something that still surprises people today. Ancient humans were burying stone underground, letting it slowly heat beside buried fires for days at a time. The heat changed the stone's internal structure, making it far easier to chip into sharp, precise tools. That means over 160,000 years ago, humans had already figured out a multi-day heat treatment process. Not by accident, by repeated experimentation and careful memory passed down deliberately. That detail genuinely sat with me for a while after I read it. We tend to picture early humans as simple, but this was patient, structured engineering, using nothing but dirt, stone, and fire. And there's one more layer to this story worth mentioning. A wall of flame doesn't just cook dinner or light up the dark. It's also one of the only things large predators will almost never cross. For the first time, an early human group could sleep somewhat safely out in the open. Fire didn't just extend the day. It extended the number of places humans could actually survive the night. There's actually something almost funny about this if you think about it long enough. For millions of years, fire was the thing every animal on the savannah fled from. And somehow, we became the one species that fled toward it instead and turned it into a bodyguard. Honestly, when I started researching this video, I expected a simple single-scene answer. Someone strikes two rocks, sparks fly, done. Instead, I found a technology that took our species over 500,000 years to fully master. Fire wasn't one invention, it was several. Learning to keep it alive came first. Learning to actually create it came brutally late, only fully confirmed just recently. And learning what to do with it culturally might still be unfolding even now. So the next time you strike a lighter without even thinking about it, remember that tiny spark took our ancestors more than 500,000 years' patience, loss, and quiet trial and error to finally call their own. Want to know how ancient humans invented country next? Drop a comment below and I'll cover it in the next video.